Genesis 30 tonight. We would have been a great deal farther in Genesis had it not been for the shutdown that we had there for a couple of months. But it doesn't matter. We're going to read the first 9 verses of this chapter about family situation. Verse 1, and when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children or else I die. Remember I said last week that when you have 4 wives, you're going to have a lot of problems in the family. There's going to be jealousy, there's going to be resentment, and it's beginning to show right here. Rachel's jealous. Leah is having sons. You know, she's born children and Rachel didn't have any. You know, Rachel is the one who's loved, and now Leah, who is not the one who's loved most, is having children, and Rachel is really upset over this. Give me children or else I die. You see something here about Rachel? She hasn't learned yet to trust the Lord. Jacob, you give me children. Well, God is in control of life. You give me children, I'm going to die. None of that is true. God will give her children when He's ready, and He's going to call her home when He's ready. Just because she doesn't have a child in 9 months, she's not going to die. She has a problem here. We're going to see that later on, this problem. Verse 2 said, and Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? Now see, Jacob is a far more mature person here in the Lord. He realizes that God is the giver of life. And that's exactly what he is telling Rachel. I didn't withhold that child. God did. And He has a reason for it. He is the Lord, and everything He does has a reason. And we're going to see this reason. He said, God has a plan and a purpose. There are going to be 2 very beloved sons, and of course, a great deal of the remainder of Genesis is going to focus on one of those sons when we get to Joseph. But she is blaming him, and now Jacob is saying, basically God's in control. Now she's angry. Why is he angry? Because Rachel is not thinking about God. She's jealous. And she said, now, behold, my maid Bilhah, go into her bed, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. Okay, what is Rachel trying to do now? She is trying to help God. You know, you give me a child, and you know, Jacob says, God does this. God's the one who has life and death in His hands. Well, you take my handmaiden, and she'll have a child. She'll deliver that child on my lap, which was the custom there. They'll become my child. Well, this has been done before. And what did it cause? Trouble. You know, Sarah did the same thing. And not only was there family trouble, there's the trouble still today. There's still a war going on now between those 2 tribes because of that. And this is also, you have to remember, every child that's born to a different mother, it's going to cause some rubbing the wrong way. There's going to be some jealousy and some anger along the way. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went into her. Well, you know, now Jacob has little rubbery knees. You know, he just got through telling her, God will give you a child when He's ready. He said, well, take my handmaid. You notice that he went right on. He did not say, this is wrong. Jacob went right on into her. He willingly does this. You know, Jacob is right here. We see the human side of Jacob here. We see the sinful side. We see the worldly side of him here. I'm going to tell you something that we'll watch a little later on. When he's named Israel, I don't know if you've ever noticed it or not. You know, after the night he wrestles with the angel. From that point on, when you look at Scripture, Sometimes he's called Israel, and sometimes he's called Jacob. You know the difference? When his faith is weak, God calls him Jacob. When his faith is strong, he's called Israel. Right here, he's still totally Jacob. Boy, okay, I'll help you out. Yeah, he's going to help Rachel out, all right. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. But it wasn't because Rachel told him to go to her handmaid. God caused this birth. Here again, God says, well, God had a plan. Yes, these 4 wives are going to cause a problem, but the 4 wives are also going to allow Jacob to have the 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel very quickly. He's going to have that nation's going to grow rather fast here. That's like early. Have you ever noticed how many twins there are in Scripture? Because God is allowing things to move at His pace. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore call she his name Dan. We can talk more about Dan later, but of all the 12 tribes, Dan was probably the weakest of all of them. He was not your most powerful group. They tended to, well, we'll talk about them later. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again and bare Jacob a second son. It seems that Jacob's spending a lot of time now with a handmaiden. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And he called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. Okay. Now, Leah is jealous. I'm not having any more children, and I need children so that Jacob will love me more. So you take it worked for Rachel, it'll work for me. Take my maid. So Rachel's son through Bilhah do not reflect the faith that Leah had. Leah had more faith up to this point. She, like Sarah, Rachel was trying to attempt to aid God. She was trying to make something happen. Here, you have to trust God. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that Jacob had explained to both Leah and Rachel what God had said to him. The entire Abrahamic covenant, how he was going to be blessed, how his offspring was going to be like the stars of heaven or the sands on the beach. She didn't take it to heart. God's time is not our time. Our time is not God's time. Just trust. And Rachel felt she'd been wronged in her barrenness. But other women in Scripture have been barren too for a long time. Look at Sarah, 90 years. Yeah. Rebecca, a good while. And here again. And she is jealous of her sister. Boy, jealousy is a problem. It's a problem not only in this case in families, but church families, work. It's a terrible problem. So her effort to have children through her maidservant reflects Sarah's attempt with Hagar back in chapter 16. And we don't learn from our mistakes. If you don't learn from them, what are you going to do? You're going to repeat them. This is going to be a problem. And the names of the 2 sons that were born to the handmaiden reflect Rachel's, I think, bitter struggle, and now she has a feeling of victory. The name Dan is explained by a Hebrew word. It means God has vindicated me. That is, He now had corrected Rachel's wrong in her barrenness. God wasn't correcting her barrenness. She's still barren. She still doesn't have a child. This child is her maid's child, not hers. And Naphtali reflected her great struggle, which she said, I fought with my sister, basically is the meaning. We see what her attitude here, her feeling here. There is now that friction between sisters. And we read in verse 10, and Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. Again, you notice Jacob willingly went on. He didn't tell Leah, now God's going to take care of this. He's just going on. Now, my question is he henpecked? Or is he just worldly here? I think he's just worldly. He's got the idea that, okay, I've got 4 wives now. And Leah said, a troop cometh. And she called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. Leah, just like Rachel earlier, responded in jealousy. And again, just like her sister, she's offering her maid to her husband, to whom Gad, meaning fortune, and Asher, meaning blessing, were born. Leah saw that with God's help, she was prospering. As I look at these two women, I do see more faith in Leah, but here again, we see that she doesn't have total faith because she is bending a little bit. I want it, and I want it now. But she didn't wait on God. But Jacob is actually setting the table here for more family problems. It's within the family. You have one husband, 4 wives, and a group of half-brothers. There are going to be some full brothers, but half-brothers, and that's always, unless the family is brought up just right, that's going to be friction. How in the world can you not play favorites in that situation? Later on, we see that what happens? He does play favorites, doesn't he? Joseph and then Benjamin become his favorite sons. And what with him playing favorites, the whole story of Israel really changes, doesn't it? As we get over to that part. Verse 14. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. And she said unto her, it is a small matter that thou hast taken my husband. And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. And Jacob came out of the field that evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob a 5th son. And Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Ishar. And Leah conceived again, and Jacob bare the 6th son. And Leah said, God hath endowed me with good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. And afterward she bare a daughter, and called her name Diana. So Reuben, the firstborn there, Jacob's firstborn, found some mandrakes in the field. Supposedly these have aphrodisiacs and have some power. Rachel said, you know what? It might work for me. Let me have those. But Leah said, no, well, I will, but there's that little but in there. I'm going to hire Jacob with the plants. Yeah, I'll give you these, but I get the husband. Notice she met him in the field. She's ready. Just I hired you. Isn't that something? I hired you for the mandrakes. And they had a son. Ishar means my hire. Interesting how these names actually mean something, isn't it? The name of the 6th son was Zebulun. It had a double significance, gift as well as honor. So Leah said God gave her Zebulun as a gift, and her husband would treat her with honor. Oh, he's going to love me now more than Rachel. It's a contest. Leah's hopes for being the number one wife never diminished. Then she had a daughter. Of course, that's another story we'll run into down the line here. She continually desired Jacob to love her best. She wanted to be the number one wife. Now, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but isn't she the number one wife? Think about it. I know that her sons, you go down through the sons, they were disappointing, but not Judah. Even though Judah made mistakes too, we'll get into that later, but the line of the Messiah comes through Leah and her offspring. So she is elevated. In God's eyes, she's elevated to number one, even if she may never have felt like it in her earthly life with Jacob. Verse 22, and God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. Finally, Rachel had a son, Joseph. But it wasn't because of the mandrakes. No, it was because of God. Verse 22, and God remembered Rachel. Now, that doesn't mean that God had forgotten about her. That's the old English way of saying, it's time. Now is the time that I had planned for Joseph to be born. God doesn't forget anything. Sometimes we read this and we think, well, man, God forgot this, or God, he didn't. That's just kind of a poetic way of saying he remembered. This shows right here that the births are God-given, not manipulated by people. And all happens according to God's will in God's own perfect time and for his purpose. Joseph's name, like Zebulon, had a double meaning. She said, God hath taken away my reproach. And then she prayed for another son. All of a sudden now, you kind of see Rachel with a little more faith. She's been asking for a son for a long time. Now she has it. And I'm going to get another son. She's jubilant now. She's happy. Looking in faith now for a second child from God. So this passage is a combination of small narratives. And there's some puns put in there by the name of Jacob's sons. Each name was interpreted by Leah or Rachel to reflect family considerations at the price of different things. It meant something, and the names meant something. But they all had a testimony to God that he is the giver of life. They are learning something now. That God has it in his hands. No one else. Certainly the passage shows how God prospered Jacob just as he said he would. This is the start of a great nation. This is think about it. If Abraham had one son of blessing, just one. Ishmael, of course, that's still a problem. Isaac, 2 sons. Now look at the blessing on Jacob. He has 12 sons now and a daughter. God is prospering him. And this family is going to multiply. I know they'll be going down into Egypt at 70, but when they come out, it's going to be a great nation. So to Israel, these narratives should have been more than just little interesting short stories. It should have been lessons for them. Rivalry that appears here explains much of the tribal rivalry that's going to follow over the years. But Genesis is clear. God chose the despised mother, Leah, and exalted her to the first mother. She was the one who would bring forth the kingly tribe of Judah and the priestly tribe of Levi. Both of them go back to her. In spite of Jacob's love for Rachel and her son Joseph, it is Leah and her sons that God used. Let me see if may not have enough time to finish here tonight. I think what I'm going to do is stop right there. I have a change of thought at verse 25, and that's where I'll pick up, Lord willing, next week.